Hello, hope you're well. Hope you've had a good last week, and let's get stuck into what we're doing this week. Now, this week I decided to do a video on unsolved murders because unfortunately there are so many unsolved murders and unsolved crimes in general, really, which is quite sad when you think about it, because people just don't get the justice that they deserve. So for that reason, it's quite sad. So yeah, I'm going to stop waffling about it and I'll see you on the other side. Naturally, we all want justice when it comes to crimes, especially murder. Imagine something awful happening to someone that you know, but not being able to get justice for that person. Never having a person to blame. It would be awful, and many people have had to deal with just that, because of not all murder cases are solved. Some cases go unsolved for years. Sometimes they're actually never solved. The trauma of being a victim is bad enough, but imagine knowing that your family or your loved ones will never know who did this to you. So let's delve into a few unsolved murder cases. The Green Bicycle Case. On the evening of the 5th of July, just before dusk, the body of a young lady was discovered in the middle of the road near Stretton by a farmer. The body was laying in a pool of blood, and a bicycle was found by her side. At first it was thought that she was met with a fatal accident, but ultimately it was ascertained that she had been shot through the head. This report appeared in the pages of the Leicester Daily Post in March 1920, some months after the body of the 21-year-old Annie Bella Wright, who was known as Bella, was found in Leicestershire. In a case which frustrated Scotland Yard, it was thought that the tragedy would fall into the limbo of mysteries which are never solved. But there was one clue, and that clue revolved around a man and his green bicycle, who had been sighted in the company of Bella. He'd been with her as she cycled to visit her relatives in Evington, and he'd been waiting for her outside when she left. When that green bicycle was dragged from the canal in March 1920, it led to arrest of one Ronald Light, a former officer with the Royal Engineers. The evidence against Light, now a school teacher, was compelling. The Leicester Daily Post tells of how Henry Cox, a Leicester cycle repairer, had identified Light from among 9 other men as a man who took a green BSA bicycle to his shop. And the prosecution launched a stinging attack on Light at the ensuing trial, suggesting that he had been prompted into a rage by Bella before rejecting his advances, as well as giving evidence of his movements of that fateful July day. Between 4 and 4:30 in the afternoon, he was at his home for tea, and it was impressed upon him that he must be at home by 8:30 for hot supper. He did not return, however, until 10:30, when he was wheeling his bicycle. He told Mary Webb, who was a domestic at his mother's house, that he was home late because his bicycle had gone wrong again. It looked as though Light might be convicted, but as the Nottingham Journal reported, Ronald Light was acquitted, thanks to a brilliant speech from his defence counsel Sir Edward Marshall Hall. The defence, using evidence from Light himself, suggested that a shooting accident had occurred, resulting in the death of Bella Wright, and that Light, panicked that he had indeed been seen with her, disposed of the telltale green bike. I did not give information because I was absolutely dazed about the whole thing. What I saw in the newspapers was certainly the first information given to me of the murder. I did not give information because apparently everyone had jumped to the conclusion that the man on the green bicycle had murdered the girl. The jury accepted this version of events, resulting in the case of Bella Wright's death never being determined. And therefore, it remains another unsolved murder. Mr. H. Truman Humphreys, according to the Yorkshire Evening Post, had his own theory, but whether this is the truth of what happened to Bella Wright will never be known. So this theory amounts to this: a young lad, young because no one of mature years would take such a risk, Seeing the crow perched on a bar of a gate, he shot at it from a field. Precisely at the moment, Miss Wright, who had been hidden from view by a high hedge, whizzed past the gate. The shot that killed the bird was still rising, and it killed her. Brighton trunk murders. The South Coast was again to be home of more killings, which would provide fodder for especially salacious headlines. In 1934, a trunk was discovered at Brighton railway station containing the remains of a woman, and a scrap of paper containing the word Ford, which was thought to be the last part of a place name, and it was the only tangible clue. As the Daily Herald reports, Sussex police soon swung into action to establish both the identity of the victim and of her killer. 40 police set out to comb 3 Sussex towns in a military-style operation covering Brighton, Hove and Portslade. As the Nottingham Journal remarked, it's difficult to believe that the killing, dissecting and disposal could have been done without arousing any suspicion. But, as with the Thames murders, some 50 years before, both victim and murderer remained unidentified. And then, in July 1934, just a month later, another body in a trunk was discovered in Brighton. Her identity was discovered to be that of Violet Saunders, also known as Violette or Violet K, a dancer. And her alleged killer was soon brought into custody. A one-time waiter, Tony Mancini, who also went by the name of Jack Notire. Brighton, then full of summer holidaymakers, was swept into a frenzy by this case. Crowds of holidaymakers, many of them in bathing costumes, appeared and gathered to see Mancini arrive at Brighton Town Hall. And amazing scenes were witnessed as they fought to catch a glimpse of him. But the case against Mancini, like the one against Ronald Light, would not stick. Mancini admitted to finding Violet dead, but given his criminal record, he thought that the police would be sure to arrest him, so he disposed of her body in the trunk. The defence put forward that Violet had died accidentally due to her abuse of morphine, or that she had been killed by somebody else. The presiding judge, Mr. Justice Branson, instructed the jury as follows: "If you're not satisfied that she died from the blow upon her head, then I think you should immediately acquit this prisoner." Mancini was duly acquitted, whilst the first of the Brighton trunk murders, deemed not to be connected to the death of Violet K, remained yet another unsolved murder. The Tara Calico case. On the morning of September 20th, 1988, in New Mexico, it seemed like a perfect day to ride a bike. Tara Calico borrowed her mother's pink bike to go out for a spin. Extroverted and active, she worked as a bank teller and was studying to become either a psychologist or a psychiatrist. She planned to play tennis that afternoon and asked her mum to drive out after her in case she got a flat tyre and didn't return home by noon. She never did return. Every lead went to a dead end until a year later, when a photo was found depicting a woman of her age and a missing boy, both gagged. The Polaroid photograph was found in a parking lot outside Junior's food store in Florida. The 9-year-old Michael Henley was missing in the same area as Calico in April 1988 when he was hunting turkeys with his father. They appeared to be in the back of a van with a copy of a book written by V.C. Andrews, Calico's favourite author, lying right beside the girl. Initially, Tara's mother didn't think that the girl was her, but the girl in the photograph had a scar identical to Calico. But still, due to a lack of evidence, many experts dismissed the photograph. In 1990, Michael Henley's body was found in Zuni Mountains, where he was hunting, which strongly disconnects the theory that the two were abducted and taken to Florida. Calico's parents would eventually die, never finding out who took their daughter. Nels and Annie Anderson. 43-year-old Nels and his wife, 39-year-old Annie, lived in Montana. They owned a barbershop in Minnesota Avenue. The night of December 7th, 1924, was supposed to be just like any other for the couple in the barbershop, but when closing time came, the pair cleaned the place and they grabbed their coats to leave. But sadly, they never made it out the door. The next day, police found Nels and Annie hacked to death inside the shop. The murder weapon was an axe the pair kept inside the store to split for wood for heat. The authorities found no sign of a break-in, no robbery, or any other signs of struggle. Police thought the couple was probably on their way out when they were surprised by the killer. Inside, the scene was grisly. After peering in through the window, they saw one of Nell Anderson's hands dangling over a chair. The police broke open the door and the murder scene lay in full view. The officers found Mrs. Anderson and her coat with a fur coat on, lying in the shed in the rear of the shop. Mr. Anderson was sitting in a barber chair in his overcoat with one glove on, the other lying on the floor. Officers came to the conclusion that the intruder had killed Mrs. Anderson in the parlour because it was blood spattered. Blood had also sprayed on the groceries. Then her killer, or killers, had dragged her body into the shed. Police then believed that the killer rinsed their blood off his hands in the shop's wash basin, but investigators could not find any fingerprints. Confused police combed through the couple's letters and interrogated their friends. Through it all, they couldn't find anyone who would want to harm the pair. No arrests were ever made. Nearly 100 years later, the identity of the murderer is still unknown. The case of Auntie Littler. Just after midnight on the 1st of May 1984, a man was found seriously injured in an alleyway behind East Finchley Tube Station in North London. Auntie Littler was a 45-year-old single man who worked for HM Customs and Excise as an executive officer. He had suffered catastrophic wounds to his head and was pronounced dead at the scene. He lived within walking distance from the station, and the detectives believed that he was walking home after a night out when he was attacked around 12:15 a.m. The pathway he was attacked on is known as the Causeway. The killer was never found, and the reason for his murder was never known either. However, detectives believed that Anthony was likely picked at random and investigated a possible link to an attack in the same area 2 days earlier. The victim, however, was never identified, but after speaking with a shopkeeper at Galleon Wine Stores on High Street, East Finchley, he said that he'd been attacked by 2 young people with baseball bats outside the tube station on the 28th of April 1984. It said that the man had severe facial injuries and a badly bruised eye, and the shopkeeper described him as being 6 foot tall and of medium build with short brown hair. In 1993 and 2013, the case was reviewed once more, but never solved. In a renewed appeal in December 2023, detectives asked for witnesses to come forward with information about either incident. Another mystery surrounding the case relates to the person who dialed 999 to report the attack on Auntie Littler. Police believe it was a male caller, but they did not leave their name or any other details. It is still unsolved. The Black Dahlia murder. In 1947, January the 25th, the remains of a woman named Elizabeth Short were found in Los Angeles. She was named the Black Dahlia. Her body had been cut in half and so pale and drained of blood that the woman who found the body mistook it for a mannequin at first. Her body had been cut in precision, like a surgeon had done it. No traces of trauma to internal organs or bones. Her face was cut from her mouth to her ears, leaving an awful permanent smile. Because there was no blood on the ground, it was believed that she was moved after she'd been murdered. 9 days after she'd been discovered, an examiner received an envelope with an address on it using cut-out letters from magazines and newspapers pasted on. It read, "The Los Angeles Examiner to other Los Angeles papers. Here is Dahlia's belongings. Letter to follow." And as promised, the envelope contained her social security card, birth certificate, photos and names written on pieces of paper. Also an address book with pages missing, and the name Mark Hansen embossed on the cover. Gasoline was used to clean the objects to remove any fingerprints. On the 14th of March, a suicide note written in pencil was found tucked in a shoe in a pile of men's clothing by the sea's edge of Breeze Avenue in Venice. The note read, "To whom it may concern, I've waited for the police to capture me for the Black Dahlia killing, but they have not. I'm too much of a coward to hand myself in, so this is the best way out for me. I couldn't help myself for that, or this. Sorry, Mary." The pile of clothing was seen first by a beach caretaker. They reported the discovery to the lifeguard captain. Then the captain immediately notified the police. The clothes were a coat and trousers of blue herringbone tweed, and a brown and white shirt, white jockey shorts, tan and coloured socks, and a tan moccasin-style shoes. However, they gave no indication of the owner. Many suspects were named, but no authorities were able to identify the Dahlia's killer, and the mystery has been unsolved for many years. So there we have it. That's the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Now, what I was saying about unsolved murders is the fact that people don't get their justice that they deserve, do they? The people that are murdered, the victims, and obviously their families and friends and loved ones, and it's sad and it saddens me because I just feel like, everybody deserves some sort of justice when it comes to something so awful happening in your life. Now, I know that the police do their very best, and also I know that the police did their very best in investigating these sort of horrible crimes and murders back in the olden days, I say, in the 1940s, 20s, really old at times. I think it was much more difficult to solve these things then, because obviously back then it was a case of they didn't have all the forensics and stuff that we have today, did they? So there is that. So yeah, I just feel like it's sad, but it's also quite fascinating as well. So I'm like torn between the two, because I feel like it is very sad, but I also feel like it is very interesting, and a lot of people like me and you sort of find that sort of thing quite interesting, but also must be very frustrating for people working on the cases, like the police and the detectives and the investigators and all the crime scene people. It must be very, very infuriating, really, not being able to get the results that they're looking for. So yeah, anyway, in another changing the subject slightly, we have Wilson here today as well as Chester, but he's asleep under my feet, under my desk, because that's his preferred place to sleep, is on my feet, which is all good because I'm managing to do my video because he's having a little sleep. So otherwise it could be chaos, because he does like to run around and bite things and play, and although he is toilet trained now, he goes out whenever he needs to go out. He goes to the door. Because I'm upstairs, it's a bit more awkward, because then he'll be running to I've got a gate across the door here, and he'll be running to the gate to, let me out. It's just so I'd be constantly running up downstairs. So while he's having a little sleep, I quickly get in and do my video. Because today, although I will do my videos on the weekend, last weekend was a mission, because I couldn't do it last weekend because of was till the last minute, because of the fact that I had visitors all weekend, so it was busy. This weekend, my husband's working, but he's finishing at lunchtime. But I just thought while he's having a little sleep, I can try and do my video. So I have. It means I've got it done before my husband gets home from work. So result. Anyway, I'm going to be off with myself now, and I'll see you on the next one. So yeah, have a great week. Happy Monday. Keep smiling, and I'll see you soon. Take care of yourselves. Bye bye.